In the quiet town of Willow Creek, a single moment, a stranger's challenge to a loyal service dog, ignites a storm of suspense and buried secrets. 8-year-old Emma Carter, bound to her wheelchair, clings to Max, her protector and link to a lost father. Lucas Kane, a troubled veteran, stirs chaos with his haunted past, unaware that their collision will forge an unbreakable bond. What begins as a clash of wills unfolds into a heart-touching tale of courage, redemption, and the healing power of a dog's love. The morning sun spilled over Willow Creek, painting the cobblestone streets with a golden glow that promised a perfect day. At the heart of the small town, the Garden Bloom Café buzzed with its usual rhythm, a symphony of clinking coffee cups, murmured conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter. The outdoor patio, framed by flowering jasmine vines, was a favorite spot for locals. Young professionals grabbing lattes before work, retirees savoring their newspapers, and families enjoying a rare weekday treat. At the corner table, slightly apart from the bustle, sat 8-year-old Emma Carter, her wheelchair positioned to catch the morning breeze. Beside her, Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, lay in a perfect downstay, his amber eyes scanning the patio with the quiet vigilance of a seasoned professional. His service vest, adorned with patches that read "Working Dog Do Not Pet," gleamed under the sunlight, a silent testament to his role as Emma's protector and partner. Emma's small hands, calloused from years of maneuvering her wheelchair, carefully broke a cinnamon scone into bite-sized pieces. Her Uncle Tom, a lanky man with worry lines etched into his forehead, sat across from her, his eyes flicking between his niece and the crowded patio. "Don't forget your stretches this afternoon," he said, adjusting his glasses as he consulted the planner he carried everywhere. "Dr. Ellis says you're making great progress with your grip strength." Emma nodded, her auburn curls bouncing, though her attention had drifted to a sparrow perched on a nearby planter. "Uncle Tom, do birds ever forget how to fly?" she asked, her voice bright with the kind of curiosity that made adults pause. Tom smiled, accustomed to her philosophical tangents. "That's a question for your science teacher, kiddo," he replied, checking his watch. "I need to run to the post office before your therapy session. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Elaine's got an eye on you, and Max is right here." Emma gave a solemn nod, her hand resting on Max's head. "We'll be fine. Max and I are practicing our waiting skills." Max's tail thumped once against the concrete, as if in agreement. Tom hesitated, his caregiver's instinct warring with the knowledge that Emma craved these small moments of independence. He leaned down to kiss her forehead, double-checking the medical alert bracelet on her wrist, and then headed off, his footsteps fading into the cafe's ambient hum. Emma returned to her scone, using both hands to steady her cup of apple juice, a skill she'd mastered in occupational therapy. Max remained alert, his ears twitching at every sound, his body relaxed but ready. The patio's cheerful rhythm continued. For a few minutes, with patrons offering Emma warm smiles or nods, she was a familiar face here, her quiet resilience a source of inspiration. But the morning's peace shattered with the low rumble of a motorcycle engine cutting through the chatter. Heads turned as a single bike pulled up to the curb just beyond the patio's wrought iron fence. The rider dismounted with a practiced swagger, removing his helmet to reveal close-cropped hair streaked with premature grey. Lucas Kane, clad in a worn leather jacket and scuffed military boots, surveyed the patio with a gaze that seemed to catalogue every detail. His broad shoulders and restless energy seemed to fill the space, drawing wary glances from nearby tables. Max's ears pricked forward, his body tensing slightly, though he maintained his position. Emma noticed the change immediately. Her bond with Max so deep that she could read his signals as easily as words. "It's okay, boy," she whispered, her hand steady on his collar. But the air had shifted, a subtle tension rippling through the patio. Lucas pushed through the gate, his boots heavy on the concrete, and made his way to an empty table near the entrance. A server approached, but he waved her off with a brusque, "Coffee, black." His voice carried, too loud for the cozy space, as if he hadn't adjusted to civilian life's quieter cadence. Conversations at nearby tables grew hushed, patrons casting sidelong glances at the newcomer. Lucas's gaze swept the patio, landing briefly on Emma and Max before moving on. But moments later his eyes snapped back, locking onto the Belgian Malinois with an intensity that made Emma's stomach flutter. "That's a fine dog," he said loudly, addressing no one in particular, though his words carried across the patio. "Belgian Malinois, right? Not your average pet." The man sitting at his table, a wiry local named Pete, who'd nodded at Lucas's arrival, shrugged. "Just a kid service dog, man, let it go." But Lucas's lips curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes that held something darker, something broken. He rose abruptly, his chair scraping against the concrete, and strode toward Emma's table with deliberate steps. Max shifted, rising into a perfect sit, his body now squarely between Emma and the approaching man. No growl, no bared teeth, just a precise professional repositioning that spoke volumes. The patio fell silent, coffee cups frozen in mid-air, as patrons watched the scene unfold. Emma looked up at Lucas, her small face composed despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "Good morning, sir," she said politely as Tom had taught her, her voice steady but soft. Lucas stopped short, caught off guard by her formality. "Morning, kid," he said, his eyes still on Max. "That's some dog you've got. Purebred Malinois, trained to the nines, I bet." He crouched to Max's eye level, a move that made the dog's ears flatten slightly. "Working dog, huh? You're a pro, aren't you, boy?" He reached out a hand toward Max's snout. "Please don't touch him," Emma said quickly, her tone firm but kind. "He's on duty." Lucas's hand froze, and for a moment, a flicker of something, shame, perhaps, crossed his face. But then he straightened, his smirk returning. "On duty, huh? Let's see how good his training is." Without warning, he clapped his hands sharply, the sound cracking across the patio like a whip. Gasps rippled through the crowd, a woman at the next table spilling her coffee. Max didn't flinch, his eyes locked on Lucas, muscles tensed but stance unwavering. Lucas laughed, a harsh sound that grated against the morning's warmth. "Well, damn, that's military-grade discipline right there." He took a step closer, ignoring the murmurs of concern from other patrons. Max's body coiled, a low growl rumbling from his chest, a warning as clear as spoken language. Emma's hand tightened on his collar, but her blue eyes held no fear, only a quiet certainty. "Please, sir," she said, her voice small but steady, "you're making him nervous." The moment hung in the air, charged with unspoken stories. Lucas's pain, Max's loyalty, Emma's courage. In that instant, 3 lives bound by a shared past none of them fully understood, stood on the edge of a collision that would change them forever. The tension on the Garden Bloom Cafe's patio lingered like a held breath, the murmurs of patrons, resuming but softer now, their eyes darting between Emma Carter, her service dog Max, and the retreating figure of Lucas Kane. Lucas rejoined Pete at his table, his shoulders rigid, his coffee untouched as he stared at Max with a troubled frown. Emma, her small hands still resting on Max's collar, exhaled quietly, her composure a stark contrast to the unease rippling around her. She glanced toward the cafe entrance, hoping for Uncle Tom's return, but the doorway remained empty. Max settled back into his downstay, his alertness undiminished, as if sensing the morning's disruption was only the beginning. Emma Carter was no ordinary 8-year-old. 2 years ago, a car accident on a rain-slicked Willow Creek road had stolen her mother, Lily, and the use of her legs in one devastating moment. The tragedy left Emma navigating the world from a pediatric wheelchair, her auburn curls often tied, back in a practical ponytail by her Uncle Tom, who'd become her guardian. Before the accident, Emma had been a whirlwind of motion, climbing trees, chasing fireflies, singing off-key to her mother's favorite folk songs. Now her world was smaller, defined by therapy appointments, accessibility ramps, and the constant hum of pain that lingered in her spine. Yet what she'd lost in mobility, she'd gained in perspective. Her clear blue eyes, often described as too old by the nurses at Willow Creek Medical Center, held a quiet wisdom, a blend of grief and resilience that made adults pause. Emma's laughter, though rarer now, could still light up a room. Especially when Max was near, his presence coaxing flashes of the carefree girl she'd once been. Max, the Belgian Malinois at her side, was more than a service dog. He was Emma's lifeline. With a sleek, tawny coat and a gaze that seemed to see straight through to the soul, Max had been her father Michael Carter's final gift. Michael, a Willow Creek police officer, had arranged for Max's training before succumbing to cancer. Just months after Lily's death, Max's journey to Emma's side was extraordinary. Discovered as a half-starved stray in Afghanistan, he'd been nurtured by Michael and his military comrade Lucas Kane during their deployment. Max's intelligence and instincts had shone even then, and when Michael returned stateside, he brought the dog with him, enrolling him in the Willow Creek Police Department's K9 unit. Max excelled in search and rescue, earning commendations for locating a hiker lost in the nearby Blue Ridge Mountains. When Michael learned of his terminal diagnosis, he transitioned Max to service dog training, tailoring his skills to Emma's needs. Max's specialized harness allowed Emma to steady herself during transfers, while his imposing presence deterred the unwanted attention her wheelchair sometimes attracted. To Emma, Max was guardian, confidant, and bridge to a world that often they felt out of reach. Across the patio, Lucas Kane sat hunched over his coffee, his weathered hands drumming a restless rhythm on the table. At 35, he bore the marks of a life hard-lived. Premature grey in his hair, scars crisscrossing his knuckles, and a haunted look in his green eyes that never quite faded. Once, Lucas had been known for his steady hands and easy laugh, a military dog handler whose patience with K9s was legendary. He and Michael had bonded in Afghanistan over their love for dogs, training Max together in stolen moments between patrols. But 3 tours in the desert had hollowed Lucas out. An ambush that killed his K9 partner, Rex, and several comrades left him with shrapnel scars and a persistent ringing in his ears. Michael's quick thinking had saved Lucas's life that day, but the cost was a fracture in Lucas's spirit. Back in the States, he drifted. Jobs lost to sudden rages, relationships shattered by nightmares, his motorcycle and leather jacket his only constants. The VA's therapy programs helped, but never enough to quiet the memories or the guilt of surviving when others hadn't. Seeing Max, so disciplined and familiar, had triggered something in Lucas, a mix of nostalgia and pain that he couldn't articulate. Driving his reckless challenge at the cafe, Emma watched Lucas from the corner of her eye, her fingers absently stroking Max's fur. She'd seen that look before, in photos of her father after his first deployment. Eyes that carried too much weight, too much loss. "He's sad, Max," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Max's ears flicked toward her, his body shifting slightly closer, as if to reassure her that he was there, always there. The other patrons had returned to their conversations, but the air still felt charged, as if the confrontation had opened a door to something larger, something none of them could yet name. Emma's thoughts drifted to her father's letters, tucked away in a box under her bed, where he'd written about a friend who knew dogs better than anyone. Could that man be the same one who just scared the entire cafe? The idea seemed impossible, yet Max's reaction, alert but not aggressive, hinted at a recognition she couldn't ignore. The cafe door swung open, and Tom hurried back, his face creasing with concern as he registered the lingering tension. "Everything okay, Em?" he asked, kneeling beside her wheelchair. Emma nodded, her smile reassuring despite the flutter in her chest. "Max took care of it," she said, simply patting the dog's head. Tom's gaze flicked to Lucas, who was now staring into his coffee as if it held answers he couldn't find. The moment passed, but the seeds of connection had been planted. 3 lives bound by a shared past, poised to collide in ways that would heal old wounds and forge new bonds. The Garden Bloom Cafe's patio had settled into an uneasy calm, the morning's confrontation with Lucas Kane fading into the background hum of clinking cups and murmured conversations. Emma Carter, her small frame steady in her wheelchair, sipped her apple juice, her blue eyes occasionally flicking toward Lucas's table. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, remained in his vigilant downstay beside her, his ears twitching. At every sound, his service vest a quiet declaration of his role. Across the patio, Lucas sat with his untouched coffee, his fingers still drumming a restless rhythm, his gaze darting between Max and the horizon, as if wrestling with memories he couldn't outrun. Uncle Tom, now back from his errand, hovered, protectively, his planner forgotten as he scanned the patio for any further signs of trouble. The incident had passed, but its ripples lingered, setting the stage for the deeper stakes that bound Emma, Max, and Lucas in ways they were only beginning to uncover. For Emma, life was a delicate balance of independence and reliance, with Max at its center. The accident that took her mother and her legs at age 6 had reshaped her world, but Max was her anchor. His training went beyond basic service tasks, retrieving dropped items, opening doors, or stabilizing her during transfers from wheelchair to bed. Max was attuned to Emma's medical needs, trained to detect the early signs of autonomic dysreflexia, a dangerous complication of her spinal cord injury that could spike her blood pressure without warning. Twice in the past year, Max's insistent nudging had alerted Tom to subtle symptoms, a racing pulse, a flush on Emma's cheeks that prompted life-saving interventions. Without Max, Emma's daily routines would be exponentially harder, her confidence diminished, her sense of safety eroded. Tom, who'd left his accounting job to become her full-time caregiver, lived with the constant fear that something, or someone, could disrupt this fragile equilibrium. The cafe incident, though brief, had sharpened his vigilance. "We're sticking closer to home for a while," he muttered, more to himself than Emma, as he adjusted the blanket over her legs, a habit born of worry despite the warm morning. Max's role extended beyond the practical. To Emma, he was a living connection to her father, Michael Carter, whose memory she clung to through stories, photos, and the letters he'd written during his deployments. Michael had chosen Max for her, knowing his cancer would leave her without him. Every command Emma gave Max, every moment he lay beside her at night, was a thread tying her to the father she'd lost. The thought of anyone challenging Max's place in her life, as Lucas had done, stirred a quiet protectiveness in Emma. Though she masked it with her characteristic composure, yet something about Lucas's reaction to Max, his intense fascination, his recognition of the dog's training, nagged at her. She remembered her father's letters mentioning a friend who'd helped train a special dog in Afghanistan. Could Lucas be that friend? The possibility, however faint, made her watch him with a mix of curiosity and caution. For Lucas Kane, the stakes were both personal and existential. The sight of Max had cracked open a door to a past he'd spent years trying to bury. In Afghanistan, he and Michael had found Max, a scrawny stray with uncanny instincts, and trained him together during long, dusty nights between patrols. Those moments, teaching Max to sit, to track, to trust, had been Lucas's lifeline, a counterpoint to the chaos of war. But the ambush that killed his K9 partner, Rex, and left Lucas with shrapnel scars and PTSD, had severed that connection. Michael's decision to save Lucas by pulling him back from the blast zone had cost Michael a minor injury, but left Lucas with a crushing sense of debt. When they returned stateside, Michael thrived, building a family and a career, while Lucas spiraled. Jobs slipped through his fingers, friendships dissolved, and the VA's therapy sessions felt like shouting into a void. His motorcycle became his escape, its roar drowning out the ringing in his ears, a souvenir of the explosion that never left him. Seeing Max, so disciplined and purposeful, had stirred a longing in Lucas for the man he'd once been. The handler, who could calm a skittish dog with a whisper, the soldier who believed in something larger than himself. But it also awakened guilt. Why had he provoked the dog, frightened a child? His actions at the cafe were a reflex, a way to test boundaries when his own felt so fragile. Yet Max's controlled response, no aggression, just a steady warning, had pierced through Lucas's defenses, reminding him of the bond he'd once shared with dogs like him. And Emma's fearless politeness, her quiet, "You're making him nervous," had struck a chord he couldn't ignore. She wasn't just any child, she was the daughter of the man who'd saved his life. The realization, though not fully formed, gnawed at him, urging him to confront the wreckage of his past before it consumed him entirely. As the cafe patrons resumed their routines, the stakes for Emma, Max, and Lucas became clear. For Emma, Max was her independence, her safety, and her tie to her father's love. Any threat to him was a threat to her world. For Lucas, Max was a mirror to a life he'd lost, a chance to reclaim purpose or sink deeper into despair. And for Max, the loyal Malinois caught between them, the stakes were simple. Protect Emma always, even if it meant facing a man from his past. The morning's confrontation had been a spark, igniting a path toward collision and perhaps redemption. The Garden Bloom Cafe's patio had regained its familiar rhythm, with the scent of jasmine mingling with freshly brewed coffee, but an undercurrent of unease lingered. Emma Carter sat quietly at her corner table, her wheelchair angled to face the morning sun, her small fingers tracing the edge of her apple juice cup. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, lay beside her, his amber eyes tracking the patio's movements with unwavering focus, his service vest a silent reminder of his duty. Across the patio, Lucas Kane remained at his table, his coffee now cold, his restless energy subdued but not extinguished. He stole glances at Max, each one stirring a cascade of memories he'd long tried to suppress. Uncle Tom, sensing the morning's disruption had unsettled Emma, kept his voice low as he asked, "Ready to head to therapy soon, Em?" She nodded, but her gaze lingered on Lucas, her young mind piecing together fragments of intuition and memory. The confrontation had been brief, but it had cracked open the past, revealing the intricate histories that bound Emma, Max, and Lucas in a tapestry of loss, loyalty, and unspoken promises. Emma's story began with joy, but was reshaped by tragedy. Before the accident, she was a vibrant 6-year-old, her days filled with cartwheels across the backyard and bedtime stories read by her mother, Lily, whose folk song lullabies still echoed in Emma's dreams. Her father, Michael Carter, was a Willow Creek police officer, his warm laugh and steady presence a constant in her life. The family's world shattered on a stormy April evening when a distracted driver ran a red light, colliding with their car. Lily died instantly, and Emma's spinal cord injury left her paralyzed from the waist down. Michael, who'd been off duty that day, was spared physical harm, but carried the weight of grief and guilt. Diagnosed with pancreatic cancer just weeks later, he poured his remaining months into securing Emma's future. Knowing he wouldn't live to see her grow up, Michael arranged for Max, his trusted canine partner, to be retrained as Emma's service dog. He worked with specialists to ensure Max could assist with Emma's mobility and monitor her health, embedding commands that would give her independence. When Michael passed, Emma was left with her Uncle Tom, a kind but cautious man who'd never planned to raise a child, and Max, whose loyalty became her lifeline. Emma's old soul eyes, as the nurses called them, reflected a resilience forged in loss, but also a hunger for connection to the parents she'd lost too soon. Max's journey was no less remarkable. Born astray in the dusty outskirts of an Afghan military base, he was a scrawny pup with matted fur when Michael and Lucas found him scavenging near their barracks. His sharp intelligence and fearless spirit caught their attention, and they began training him in secret, sneaking him scraps and teaching him basic commands under the cover of night. Max's instincts proved uncanny. He once alerted their unit to an approaching threat, his frantic barking giving them seconds to take cover. When Michael's deployment ended, he couldn't leave Max behind. With Lucas's help, he arranged for the dog's transport to the US, where Max joined the Willow Creek Police Department's K-9 unit. For 3 years, Max served with distinction, his search and rescue missions earning local headlines. When Michael's cancer diagnosis came, he transitioned Max to service work, spending late nights in the training yard to ensure the dog could support Emma's unique needs. Max's ability to sense her medical emergencies, like the subtle tremors of autonomic dysreflexia, was a testament to Michael's foresight. To Max, Emma was his purpose, his pack, and his home, a bond sealed by the man who'd saved him from a life of hunger. Lucas Kane's story was one of valor undone by trauma. In Afghanistan, he'd been a rising star in the military K-9 program, his patience with dogs like Max and his own partner, Rex, earning him respect among his peers. He and Michael became brothers in arms, their friendship forged in the crucible of war. They shared dreams of returning home, Michael to his family, Lucas to a quiet life training dogs, but an ambush changed everything. A roadside bomb detonated during a routine patrol, killing Rex and 3 comrades. Michael's quick reflexes pulled Lucas from the blast's kill zone, but shrapnel tore through Lucas's arm, and the explosion left a permanent ringing in his ears. Michael, grazed but unscathed, stayed by Lucas's side through the medevac, but the guilt of surviving while others died burrowed deep into Lucas's psyche. Back in the States, he unraveled. The VA diagnosed severe PTSD, but therapy felt like a bandage on a gaping wound. He pushed Michael away, unable to face his friend's seemingly perfect life. Marriage, a daughter, a career. Lucas's days became a blur of odd jobs, bar fights, and long rides on his motorcycle, the engine's roar a fleeting escape from the memories that haunted him. Seeing Max at the cafe, so poised and familiar, had been like stumbling across a piece of his old self, a self he wasn't sure he could reclaim. As Emma watched Lucas from her table, a memory surfaced. Her father's letters, written during his last deployment, read aloud by her mother on quiet evenings. "My friend Lucas knows dogs better than anyone," Michael had written. "He taught Max to find me in the dark, no matter how far. Someday you'll meet him, Em, and he'll show you how to make Max dance." The words, tucked away in her heart, felt alive now, as if her father's voice were whispering across the years. Max's calm response to Lucas, despite the man's provocation, suggested a bond older than Emma's time with the dog. She wondered if Lucas was the friend her father had meant, and if so, why he seemed so lost. Tom, noticing Emma's distraction, leaned closer. "What's on your mind, kiddo?" he asked, his voice gentle but laced with worry. Emma hesitated, then said, "Max knows that man, Uncle Tom. I think Daddy did too." Tom's brow furrowed, his protective instincts flaring. He glanced at Lucas, who was now staring at the ground, his hands clasped tightly as if holding himself together. The pieces of their pasts, Emma's loss, Max's journey, Lucas's pain, were beginning to align, setting the stage for a collision that could either heal or break them. The late afternoon sun dipped low over Willow Creek Park, casting long shadows across the grassy field where families picnicked and dogs bounded through the enclosed off-leash area. Emma Carter's wheelchair rolled smoothly along the accessible path, her small hands guiding the wheels with practiced ease. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, trotted beside her, his service vest off for this rare moment of playtime, his tawny coat gleaming in the golden light. His ears were perked, his movements looser, but his eyes never strayed far from Emma, even as he sniffed the air with a dog's simple joy. Uncle Tom walked a few steps behind, his phone in hand, coordinating Emma's next therapy appointment. The park was their sanctuary, a place where Emma could feel the breeze and Max could stretch his legs, a brief escape from the structured routines that defined their days. But the memory of the morning's confrontation at the Garden Bloom Cafe lingered, a quiet tension that made Tom scan the park with heightened vigilance. Emma, her auburn curls tied back with a blue ribbon, chatted softly to Max about the squirrels darting up the oak trees. "You'd catch them if you weren't so polite, wouldn't you, boy?" she teased, her voice bright with affection. Max's tail wagged, a single thump against the ground, as if acknowledging her joke. The park's dog area was busy today, with a golden retriever chasing a tennis ball and a terrier yipping at a butterfly. But Emma preferred this quiet corner, where she and Max could practice commands or simply be together. She reached into her backpack, pulling out a worn frisbee, Max's favorite off-duty toy, and held it up. "Ready, Max? Fetch," she called, tossing it gently. Max bounded after it, his movements graceful yet controlled, returning it to her lap with a proud nudge. Emma's laughter rang out, a sound that made Tom pause his call, a smile breaking through his worry. The moment of peace was interrupted by the familiar rumble of a motorcycle engine, faint at first, but growing louder. As it approached the park's parking lot, Emma's laughter faltered, her hands tightening on the frisbee. Max's ears flicked toward the sound, his body shifting back to alert, though he remained at Emma's side. Tom ended his call abruptly, stepping closer to Emma, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the figure dismounting the bike. Lucas Kane, his leather jacket unmistakable, removed his helmet and stood at the edge of the park, his posture hesitant, almost uncertain. The confidence he'd displayed at the cafe was gone, replaced by a visible struggle, as if he'd come here against his better judgment. Emma watched him, her young face composed but curious, her earlier intuition about Lucas resurfacing. "It's him, Uncle Tom," she whispered, her hand resting on Max's head. "The man from this morning." Tom's jaw tightened, his protective instincts flaring. "Stay here, Em," he said, starting toward Lucas, but Emma's small voice stopped him. "Wait, I think he's sorry." Tom hesitated, glancing back at her, then at Lucas, who was now walking slowly toward them, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. The park's other visitors paid little attention, but a few dog owners nearby glanced over, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Max rose to a sit, his body positioned protectively between Emma and Lucas, but his demeanor was different from the cafe. No growl, no flattened ears, just a steady watchfulness that suggested recognition. Lucas stopped a respectful distance away, his green eyes bloodshot, his voice rough but softer than before. "I owe you an apology," he said, addressing both Emma and Tom but focusing on Emma. "What I did at the cafe, scaring you, testing your dog like that, it was wrong. I wasn't thinking straight." His hands fidgeted, then dropped to his sides, as if he didn't know what to do with them. Tom crossed his arms, his tone clipped. "You upset my niece and half the cafe. Why should we listen to you now?" Lucas winced, but he didn't back away. "Because I owe it to her. And to Max." He glanced at the Malinois, a flicker of something, grief perhaps, crossing his face. "He's no ordinary dog. I knew him before." Emma's eyes widened, her earlier suspicion confirmed. "You knew Max from when he was with my daddy?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the question. Lucas nodded, crouching to her eye level, a move that made Max's ears twitch but didn't provoke a reaction. "Yeah, kid. Your dad, Michael, he and I found Max in Afghanistan. We trained him together. He was just a pup then, but he had heart." His voice cracked and he looked away, swallowing hard. "Seeing him today with you, it brought a lot back. Stuff I've been running from." Tom's expression softened, slightly, though his skepticism remained. "You served with Michael? He never mentioned you." Lucas's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "I didn't make it easy. After we got back, I pushed him away. Wasn't in a good place." He met Emma's gaze, his eyes searching hers. "But your dad, he was the best man I knew. And Max, he's proof of that." Emma tilted her head, studying Lucas with the uncanny perceptiveness that often surprised adults. "Max didn't growl at you," she said simply. "He knows you're not bad, even if you were loud." She paused, then added, "Want to say hi to him? He likes when people are calm." Lucas blinked, caught off guard by her offer. Tom started to protest, but Emma's quiet confidence stopped him. She patted Max's head, giving a soft command. "Max, friend." Max's posture relaxed slightly, and he extended a paw toward Lucas, a gesture Michael had taught him years ago. Lucas stared at the paw, his throat working, then gently took it, his rough hand trembling. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. For a moment the park seemed to fade, leaving only the three of them, Emma, Lucas, and Max, connected by a shared past and a fragile hope. Tom watched, his reluctance warring with the sight of Emma's calm trust. "This doesn't mean we're okay," he said firmly, "but if you're serious about making amends, you keep your distance until we figure this out." Lucas nodded, rising slowly. "Fair enough. I needed to say I'm sorry." He glanced at Emma, a ghost of a smile breaking through. "You're a tough kid. Your dad would be proud." With that he turned and walked back to his motorcycle, the engine's roar fading as he rode away. Emma looked down at Max, her fingers tracing his fur. "He's sad, Max," she said softly, "like Daddy was sometimes. But I think he wants—" "That'd be better." The second encounter had opened a door, however tentative, to a connection that could change them all. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving Willow Creek Park bathed in the soft glow of dusk. Emma Carter's wheelchair rested near the park's accessible picnic table, where she and Uncle Tom lingered after their encounter with Lucas Kane. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, lay at her side, his service vest back on, his alert eyes, tracking the fading silhouettes of other park-goers. The frisbee game was over, but Emma's mind was far from play, her small hands clutching the worn toy as she processed Lucas's apology and his startling admission. He'd known her father, Michael, and had trained Max in Afghanistan. Tom, sitting across from her, was quiet, his brow furrowed as he wrestled with the implications of Lucas's words. The air felt heavy with unspoken questions, as if the park itself were holding its breath, waiting for the past to unfurl its secrets. Emma broke the silence, her voice soft but deliberate. "Uncle Tom, do you think Daddy wanted us to meet Lucas?" Tom looked at her, startled by the question's depth. He adjusted his glasses, a habit when he needed time to think. "I don't know, Em. Your dad never mentioned anyone named Lucas, but if he knew Max, that's something." He hesitated, then added, "We need to be careful. That man's got issues, and I won't let anyone upset you again." Emma nodded, her blue eyes drifting to Max, who shifted closer, his warm flank pressing against her wheelchair. "Max trusts him," she said simply. "And Daddy always said Max could tell who's good inside, even if they're messed up outside." Tom sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. He'd taken on guardianship of Emma with love but little preparation, learning to navigate her medical needs, her grief, and the constant vigilance required to protect a child with disabilities. The idea of Lucas, with his volatile demeanor and troubled past, entering their lives felt like a risk he wasn't ready to take. Yet Emma's words echoed Michael's uncanny intuition, a trait she'd inherited along with his stubborn hope. "Let's head home," Tom said finally, standing to gather their things. "We'll talk more about this later." But as they made their way to the car, Emma's thoughts were already racing, piecing together fragments of her father's letters and Lucas's haunted eyes. That evening, in the cozy clutter of their small bungalow, Emma sat at the kitchen table, a shoebox of her father's letters open before her. Tom was in the living room, reviewing therapy schedules while Max lay at Emma's feet, his steady presence grounding her. The letters, written during Michael's last deployment, were her most treasured possession, their pages worn from countless readings. Her mother, Lily, had read them aloud when Emma was younger, her voice weaving Michael's words into stories of desert nights and brave dogs. Now Emma traced the neat handwriting with her finger, searching for clues. One letter, dated 3 years before the accident, caught her attention. "My friend Lucas is teaching Max to track scents in the dark," Michael had written. "He's got a gift with dogs, Em. He's rough around the edges, but his heart's bigger than he lets on. If anything happens to me, I hope you'll meet him someday. He'll make you laugh and he'll keep Max sharp for you." Emma's breath caught, her heart pounding as the pieces clicked into place. Lucas wasn't just a stranger. He was the friend her father had trusted, the one who'd helped shape Max into the dog who now defined her world. She called out to Tom, her voice trembling with excitement. "Uncle Tom, come look." Tom hurried over, his worry deepening as he saw the open letter. Emma read the passage aloud, her words steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. "It's him, Uncle Tom. Lucas is the one Daddy wrote about. He's supposed to be here." Tom read the letter himself, his expression shifting from skepticism to something softer, almost pained. "Michael never told me about this," he said quietly, sitting beside her. "But your dad, he had a way of planning for things we couldn't see coming, like Max." He glanced at the Malinois, who lifted his head, as if sensing the weight of the moment. "If Lucas was that important to him, maybe there's more to this than I thought." Emma nodded, her small hand resting on Max's head. Lucas looked at Max like he missed him, like he misses Daddy too. The next morning, as Tom and Emma prepared for a routine physical therapy session, a knock at the door startled them. Tom opened it to find Lucas standing on the porch, his leather jacket replaced by a plain flannel shirt, his posture less defiant, more uncertain. Max, at Emma's side, perked up, but remained still, his tail giving a single wag. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," Lucas said, his voice rough but earnest. But I couldn't stop thinking about yesterday, about Max and Michael. He held up a small, weathered photo, its edges curled from years of being carried. It showed two soldiers, Michael and Lucas, kneeling beside a young Max in a desert camp, their smiles bright against the dusty backdrop. Emma's eyes widened, and Tom gestured for Lucas to come inside, his reluctance tempered by the undeniable proof in the photo. They sat at the kitchen table, the letter and photo side by side, as Lucas began to speak. "Michael saved my life in Afghanistan," he said, his gaze fixed on the table. "We were on patrol when Max started acting up, barking, pulling us back. I thought he was just spooked, but Michael trusted him. When the bomb went off, Michael dragged me out of the blast zone. I got shrapnel, he got a scratch, but others—" His voice broke and he looked at Emma. "Your dad was a hero, and Max was his shadow." Emma listened, her young face solemn but unafraid. "Daddy wrote about you," she said, sliding the letter toward him. "He said you'd make me laugh and keep Max sharp." Lucas read the passage, his hands trembling, tears welling in his eyes. "I didn't know he wrote that," he whispered. "I pushed him away after I got back. Couldn't face how together he seemed while I was falling apart." He met Emma's gaze, his voice steadying. "But I owe him. And you. I want to make this right. Help with Max. Keep his training up. If you'll let me." Tom's expression was guarded, but Emma's was open, her trust in Max's judgment unwavering. "Max likes you," she said simply, "and Daddy wanted you here." The revelation of their shared past, sealed by Michael's words and Max's loyalty, laid the foundation for a fragile new beginning. The morning light filtered through the curtains of the Carter bungalow, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where Emma sat at the table, her wheelchair positioned beside a bowl of oatmeal sprinkled with blueberries. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, lay in his designated spot. At her side, his service vest neatly adjusted, his amber eyes following her every move. The air was filled with the comforting scent of coffee and the soft hum of routine, but today felt different, charged with the promise of change. Uncle Tom stood at the counter, packing Emma's therapy bag, his movements deliberate, but his expression softer than it had been in days. The revelation of Lucas Kane's connection to Michael and Max, cemented by the letter and photograph, had shifted something in their small family. Lucas's offer to help with Max's training hung in the air, a tentative bridge between past promises and present uncertainties. Emma, her auburn curls tied back with a green scrunchie, was unusually quiet, her thoughts circling the man who'd known her father. She'd reread Michael's letter last night, her fingers tracing the words about Lucas's big heart, and she'd felt a spark of hope. Max, sensing her mood, nudged her hand with his nose, prompting a small smile. "You think he's coming today, Max?" she whispered. As if on cue, a knock at the door broke the morning's calm. Tom glanced at Emma, his protective instincts, still sharp, then opened the door to reveal Lucas. He looked different, clean-shaven, his flannel shirt pressed, his green eyes clearer, though still shadowed by the weight he carried. In his hand was a small canvas bag, its contents clinking softly. "Morning," he said, his voice steady but cautious. "I brought some training tools for Max, if you're still okay with me helping." Tom hesitated, his hand lingering on the doorframe, but Emma's voice cut through the tension. "Come in, Mr. Lucas," she called, her tone polite but warm. Tom stepped aside, gesturing Lucas to the table. Max's ears perked, his tail giving a single wag, a sign of recognition that eased the room's atmosphere. Lucas sat across from Emma, setting the bag down gently. "Just Lucas is fine, kid," he said, offering a half-smile, "and thanks for letting me come back." "I meant what I said. I want to keep Max's skills sharp, like your dad would have wanted." He glanced at Tom, adding, "I know I've got to earn your trust. I'm working on myself, too. Started a new VA program this week." Tom nodded, his skepticism tempered by Lucas's sincerity. "We'll take it slow," he said, sitting beside Emma. "Emma's safety comes first, and Max is her lifeline. Any sign of trouble and we're done." Lucas met his gaze, unflinching. "Understood." Emma, sensing the agreement, reached into her backpack and pulled out a notebook, its pages filled with her neat handwriting. "I wrote down Max's commands," she said, sliding it toward Lucas. Daddy taught me to keep track. Maybe you can check if I missed any? Lucas's eyes softened as he opened the notebook, scanning the carefully listed commands: steady, retrieve, alert, each accompanied by Emma's descriptions of when Max used them. "This is good work," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. "Your dad would have been proud of how you handle Max." He pulled a clicker and a small pouch of high-value treats from his bag, explaining, "These are for reinforcing his training. Max is top-notch, but even the best dogs need refreshers to stay sharp." He looked at Emma, his tone serious but kind. "Want to try a session now? We can work on retrieve in the backyard. Make sure he's quick with your meds or anything." "You drop." Emma's face lit up, her earlier quietness giving way to enthusiasm. "Yes, please." Tom, still watchful, agreed to supervise, and the trio moved to the small fenced backyard, where a ramp made it accessible for Emma's wheelchair. Max followed, his movements precise, sensing the shift to work mode. Lucas knelt beside Emma, showing her how to use the clicker to mark Max's correct responses. "Drop this," he said, handing her a small weighted pouch mimicking a medication bottle. Emma tossed it a few feet away, then gave the command. "Max, retrieve." Max sprang into action, snatching the pouch and returning it to her lap with a gentle nudge, his tail wagging as Emma clicked and rewarded him with a treat. "Perfect," Lucas said, his grin genuine. "You're a natural, kid." The session continued, with Lucas guiding Emma through variations, retrieving from different angles, ignoring distractions like a squeaky toy Lucas tossed as a test. Max performed flawlessly, his bond with Emma evident in his eager responses. Tom watched from the porch, his arms crossed but his posture relaxing, as he saw Emma's confidence grow. Lucas's patience, so different from the volatility at the cafe, echoed the stories Michael had told about his friend's skill with dogs. During a break, Lucas shared a memory, his voice low. "Your dad and I used to do this with Max in Afghanistan. Toss sticks in the dark to see if he'd find them. He never failed us." Emma listened, her eyes wide, soaking in every detail about her father. "Did Max make Daddy laugh?" she asked. Lucas chuckled, a sound that felt like a breakthrough. "All the time. Michael said Max had a better sense of humor than me." The weeks that followed saw a cautious rhythm emerge. Lucas visited twice a week, always under Tom's supervision, working with Emma and Max in the backyard or at the park. He taught Emma advanced commands like brace, where Max stood rigid to support her during a transfer, strengthening her independence. Max thrived, his skills honed by Lucas's expertise, and Emma blossomed, her laughter more frequent, her questions about her father endless. Lucas in turn found purpose in the routine, his VA therapy sessions gaining traction. As he channeled his energy into helping Emma, he began opening up, sharing stories of Michael's courage and humor, each one a gift to Emma's hungry heart. Tom's wariness softened, though he remained vigilant, noting how Max's calm demeanor around Lucas signaled trust. One evening, as Lucas helped Emma practice alert for medical emergencies, Tom joined them, asking about Lucas's time with Michael. The stories, Nights Under Desert Stars, Max's first successful track, wove a bridge between past and present. A heartwarming moment came when Emma, giggling, convinced Lucas to try a playful command Michael had taught Max. "Dance." At D. Her signal, Max spun in a circle, paws light on the grass, and Lucas laughed. A full, unguarded sound that made Emma clap with delight. For the first time, the three felt like a team, united by Max and Michael's legacy. The Willow Creek Community Center buzzed with energy on a crisp Saturday afternoon. Its sprawling lawn transformed into a vibrant festival, celebrating the town's annual harvest fair. Colorful booths lined the grass, offering homemade jams, cider, and crafts, while children darted through a hay maze, their laughter mingling with the twang of a local bluegrass band. Emma Carter's wheelchair rolled smoothly along the accessible path, her auburn curls bouncing under a knitted hat as she clutched a caramel apple, a rare treat. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, walked in perfect heel position beside her, his service vest gleaming, his amber eyes scanning the bustling crowd with professional vigilance. Uncle Tom pushed a bag of festival goodies, pumpkin muffins, a hand-painted bookmark for Emma, while Lucas Kane, now a regular presence, walked on Emma's other side, his flannel shirt a far cry from the leather jacket of weeks past. The trust they'd built through Max's training sessions had brought them here together, a makeshift family enjoying a day of normalcy. Emma's face glowed with excitement as she pointed to a booth where kids painted pumpkins. "Can we try that, Uncle Tom?" she asked, her voice bright. Tom smiled, his usual worry softened by the festive atmosphere. "Sure thing, Em. Lucas, you up for some pumpkin art?" Lucas chuckled, a sound that had become more frequent. "Only if Max gets to pick the colors." Emma giggled, patting Max's head. "He'd choose blue, it's his favorite." Max's tail thumped, as if in agreement, drawing smiles from nearby fairgoers who'd grown fond of the pair. The past. Weeks had woven Lucas into their lives. His steady presence during Max's training, his stories of Michael, his quiet commitment to his VA therapy, all building a fragile but growing bond. For Emma, Lucas was no longer the scary man from the cafe, but Uncle Lucas, a title she'd started using after a particularly joyful training session. The fair was in full swing when a sharp, acrid smell cut through the sweetness of cider and hay. Tom's brow furrowed, his accountant's instinct for detail picking up the anomaly. "Is that smoke?" he muttered, scanning the horizon. Lucas, his military training kicking in, followed Tom's gaze to the community center's rear, where a faint haze rose from the direction of the storage shed. Before anyone could react, a scream pierced the air, followed by shouts of "Fire!" Panic rippled through the crowd as festival-goers scrambled, some grabbing children, others rushing toward the exits. The bluegrass band stopped mid-song, and a crackle of flames became audible, growing louder as orange flickers appeared near the shed. Max's demeanor shifted instantly, his body tensing, ears flattening as he pressed closer to Emma. He let out a low, urgent whine, his nose twitching toward the smoke, a signal Emma recognized from his medical alert training. "Uncle Tom, Max says we need to go," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Tom nodded, gripping her wheelchair handles, but Lucas's attention snapped to a group of fairgoers near the shed, where a young boy, no older than 6, stood frozen, separated from his mother by the surging crowd. "There's a kid stuck," Lucas said, his voice tight, already moving toward the danger. Tom shouted, "Lucas, wait!" But Lucas was gone, weaving through the crowd with a soldier's focus. Emma's heart raced as she watched Lucas disappear into the haze. Max's whine grew insistent, and he tugged gently at her wheelchair, urging her toward the parking lot where emergency vehicles were arriving. "Max, stay," she commanded, her small hands trembling but firm. Tom pushed her wheelchair swiftly, joining other families at a safe distance, but Emma's eyes remained fixed on the shed, where flames now licked the wooden walls. Sirens wailed as firefighters deployed, their hoses spraying arcs of water, but the smoke thickened, obscuring Lucas and the boy. Inside the chaos, Lucas reached the boy who was coughing, tears streaking his face. "It's okay, buddy, I've got you," Lucas said, scooping him up. But the fire had spread to a stack of hay bales, blocking their path back to the main lawn. Lucas's training took over, his eyes scanning for an exit when a familiar bark cut through the roar of flames. Max, defying Emma's command, had broken free and bolted toward the shed, his search and rescue instincts overriding his service. "Roll." He appeared through the smoke, barking sharply, his nose pointed toward a narrow gap between the shed and a fence, a path Lucas hadn't seen. "Good boy, Max," Lucas called, following the dog's lead, clutching the boy tightly as they navigated the gap, emerging into clearer air just as firefighters reached them. Emma, watching from the parking lot, gasped as Max and Lucas stumbled. Out, the boy in Lucas's arms. Paramedics rushed forward, taking the child to his frantic mother, while Lucas coughed, his face smudged with soot. But Emma's relief turned to panic when she saw Max limp slightly, his breathing labored from smoke inhalation. "Max!" she cried, her voice breaking. Tom pushed her wheelchair closer as a firefighter guided Lucas and Max to a paramedic station. A veterinarian, on site for a pet adoption booth, examined Max, her expression grim. "He's inhaled a "Lot of smoke and there's a minor burn on his flank," she said. "We need to get him to the vet hospital now." Lucas, still catching his breath, knelt beside Emma, his eyes filled with guilt. "I'm so sorry, kid. Max followed me in there. He saved us, but—" His voice cracked, unable to finish. Emma's lip trembled, but she reached out, her small hand touching Lucas's arm. "He did what Daddy trained him to do," she said, her voice small but resolute. Tom, torn between fear for Max and awe at Lucas's bravery, called the vet hospital, arranging for immediate transport. As Max was loaded into a van, his eyes locked on Emma, a whine escaping him despite his weakness. Emma clutched her caramel apple, now forgotten, her world narrowing to the fear of losing her lifeline. At the Willow Creek Veterinary Hospital, the waiting room was a stark contrast to the fair's vibrancy: sterile walls, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the heavy silence of worry. Emma sat rigidly in her wheelchair, Tom's arm around her while Lucas paced, his hands clenched. The vet emerged, her tone cautiously optimistic. "Max is stable, but the smoke did some damage to his lungs, and the burn needs treatment. He'll need weeks of rest, maybe more, before he can work again." Emma's face crumpled, the reality hitting hard. Without Max, her independence, her safety, her connection to her father, were at risk. Lucas stopped pacing, dropping to one knee beside her. "I'll help him get better, Emma," he promised, his voice raw. "Whatever it takes. He took a hit for me, for that kid. I owe him." The crisis had tested their fragile bond, but it also forged a new resolve, setting the stage for a journey of recovery and redemption. The sterile waiting room of Willow Creek Veterinary Hospital felt like a world apart from the vibrant chaos of the Harvest Fair, its fluorescent lights casting a pale glow over Emma, Carter, Uncle Tom, and Lucas Kane. Emma sat in her wheelchair, her small hands clasped tightly in her lap, her auburn curls limp under the knitted hat she hadn't removed. Her blue eyes, usually bright with curiosity, were fixed on the door to the treatment area, where Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, was fighting to recover from smoke inhalation and a burn sustained during the fire. Tom's arm rested protectively around her shoulders, his face etched with worry, while Lucas sat across from them, his elbows on his knees, his head bowed as if the weight of guilt could anchor him to the chair. The vet's prognosis echoed in their minds. Max was stable, but his recovery would be slow, his ability to serve Emma uncertain for weeks, perhaps longer. The crisis had shaken their fragile family, but it also ignited a shared determination to bring Max back to Emma's side. Emma's world had revolved around Max since the accident that took her mother and her legs. His presence wasn't just practical, retrieving her medication, bracing for transfers, alerting to medical emergencies. It was emotional, a living link to her father, Michael, who'd trained Max for her before his death. Without him, Emma felt unmoored, her routines disrupted, her confidence fragile. At home that evening, Tom helped her through transfers with a gentleness that couldn't replace Max's steady support, and Emma's silence spoke louder than tears. "He'll be okay, Em," Tom said, tucking her into bed, but his voice lacked conviction. Emma clutched a photo of Max, her whisper barely audible. "You have to come back, Max. I need you." Lucas, haunted by Max's sacrifice, threw himself into the dog's recovery with a focus that mirrored his military days. The vet, Dr. Patel, outlined a rigorous rehabilitation plan: oxygen therapy for Max's lungs, wound care for the burn, and gradual exercises to rebuild his strength. Lucas, with his background as a canine handler, was uniquely suited to help. He visited the hospital daily, working with Dr. Patel to design a program that respected Max's limits while pushing his resilience. "He's a fighter," Dr. Patel said, watching Lucas guide Max through gentle stretches in a padded recovery room. "But he needs purpose. Keep him focused on Emma." Lucas nodded, his jaw tight. "He's got that in spades." At the Carter bungalow, Lucas became a constant presence, arriving each morning with updates on Max's progress. He brought videos of Max walking short distances, his tail wagging despite the oxygen mask, and Emma watched them obsessively, her hope rekindling. Lucas also stepped into Max's role where he could, helping Emma with small tasks, carrying her therapy equipment, adjusting her wheelchair for comfort, though he couldn't replicate Max's medical alerts. To bridge the gap, Lucas contacted a local service dog organization, securing a temporary loaner dog, a retired police canine named Bella, trained in mobility assistance. Bella was gentle but less intuitive than Max, and Emma's initial resistance softened only when Lucas promised, "She's just keeping Max's spot warm." Lucas's commitment extended beyond Max. His VA therapy sessions, once sporadic, became non-negotiable, driven by a need to be the man Michael had believed in. He shared his progress with Tom, admitting to nightmares and triggers but also to breakthroughs, meditation techniques, journaling, a support group for veterans. "I'm not fixed," he told Tom one evening, "but I'm trying." For Emma, for Max, for Michael. Tom, whose wariness had faded with Lucas's consistency, began to see him as an ally, not a threat. He invited Lucas to join them at Emma's physical therapy sessions, where Lucas's encouragement, "You've got this, kid, just like Max," coaxed smiles from Emma even on tough days. Emma, though heartbroken without Max, found strength. In the routine Lucas helped build, she wrote letters to Max, a habit inspired by her father's letters to her, which Lucas read aloud during hospital visits. "Dear Max," one began, "I miss you, but Uncle Lucas says you're getting stronger. I'm practicing my stretches so we can play frisbee again." The letters gave Emma agency, and Max's subtle responses, a tail thump, a nudge toward Lucas, suggested he understood. Lucas also taught Emma to track Max's recovery, using a chart to mark milestones: first full walk, first bark, first day without oxygen. "You're his coach," Lucas told her, handing her a marker to update the chart. Emma's pride in each checkmark mirrored Max's progress, her resilience growing despite the void. A heartwarming breakthrough came during a hospital visit 2 weeks post-fire. Emma wheeled into Max's recovery room, saw him lying on a padded mat, his burn bandaged but his eyes brighter. Lucas lifted her gently onto the mat beside Max, who crawled closer, resting his head in her lap. Emma stroked his fur, tears falling. As she whispered, "You're my hero, Max." Lucas, standing back, wiped his own eyes, the moment sealing his resolve. He began mentoring other veterans at the VA, sharing Max's story to inspire their recovery, finding purpose in helping others as he helped Emma. Tom, watching this unfold, marveled at the change in their dynamic. Lucas's practical support, adapting. Emma's routines, researching adaptive equipment, eased the strain of caregiving, while his stories of Michael filled gaps in Emma's memory. One evening, as they reviewed Max's latest vet report, Tom said, "Michael would have trusted you with this. I'm starting to see why." Lucas ducked his head, his voice rough. "I'm just trying to live up to him." By the 4th week, Max was cleared for short home visits, a milestone that brought Emma's laughter back. Lucas designed a gentle exercise routine, slow walks in the backyard, scent games to keep Max's mind sharp, ensuring he healed without strain. Emma, with Bella's temporary help, adapted to the wait, her letters to Max now filled with plans for their future. The recovery journey, though grueling, had woven Emma, Tom, and Lucas into a unit, their shared love for Max forging a bond that felt like family. As Max's strength returned, so did their hope, setting the stage for a deeper connection. The soft glow of early evening settled over the Carter bungalow, where the kitchen table was a mosaic of crayons, construction paper, and a half-finished poster proclaiming "Welcome home, Max." Emma Carter, her wheelchair positioned for easy reach, carefully glued a glittery star to the sign, her auburn curls falling over her focused face. Max, her Belgian Malinois service dog, lay nearby, his recovery progressing remarkably, his bandaged flank a reminder of his heroism at the Harvest Fair fire. His service vest hung on a chair, ready for the day he'd resume full duties. But for now he was content to watch Emma with a gentle wag of his tail. Uncle Tom stirred a pot of chili on the stove, the savory aroma filling the house, while Lucas Kane sat across from Emma, carving a small wooden figure of a Malinois, his knife, moving with practiced precision. The past weeks of Max's recovery had transformed their dynamic, weaving Lucas into the fabric of their lives, not just as Michael's friend, but as a vital part of their unconventional family. Emma's reliance on Max had always been profound, but his temporary absence revealed how much she'd grown in resilience. Bella, the loner service dog, had helped with mobility tasks, but Emma's heart belonged to Max, and Lucas's dedication to his rehabilitation had bridged the gap. Lucas's daily visits, filled with vet updates, training tips, and stories of Michael, had become as essential to Emma as her therapy sessions. He'd adapted their home for Max's recovery, building a low ramp for easier movement, creating a padded rest area, and taken on practical tasks for Emma, like carrying her heavy therapy equipment or adjusting her wheelchair for long outings. His presence lightened Tom's load, allowing moments of rest for a caregiver who'd rarely known it. Emma, in turn, had begun to see Lucas not just as Uncle Lucas, but as a protector in his own right, his rough edges softened by his commitment. To her and Max, Lucas's transformation was equally striking. The man who'd once provoked fear at the Garden Bloom Cafe now carried a quiet purpose, his VA therapy sessions giving him tools to manage his PTSD. Helping Max heal had rekindled his passion for working with dogs and mentoring other veterans. At the VA had given him a sense of community he'd lost after Afghanistan. He shared his progress openly with Tom and Emma, admitting to tough days but celebrating small victories, like sleeping through the night without nightmares. Max. "Phil's teaching me as much as I'm teaching him," he'd said one evening, watching the dog navigate a scent game in the backyard. His carving, a gift for Emma, was a therapeutic outlet, each stroke of the knife a step toward healing. The bond solidified during Max's first full week back home, a milestone marked by the poster Emma was crafting. Lucas had worked with Dr. Patel to design a custom harness that supported Max's mobility without straining his healing lungs or burn site, allowing him to perform light tasks like retrieving Emma's water bottle. Emma's joy at Max's return was infectious, her laughter filling the house as she practiced commands with Lucas's guidance. "Max, steady," she'd call, and Max would stand firm, letting her lean on him for balance, his eyes bright with purpose. Tom, watching these moments, felt a weight lift, recognizing Lucas as the friend Michael had envisioned for Emma, a steady hand to guide her and Max. A pivotal moment came during a quiet afternoon at the park, where Emma, Tom, and Lucas took Max for a short walk, his harness gleaming under the autumn sun. Emma, inspired by her father's letters, asked Lucas to tell a story about Michael that made him laugh. Lucas paused, then recounted a night in Afghanistan when Michael, trying to teach Max to speak, ended up barking himself, startling. A sleeping comrade. "Your dad was red-faced, but he couldn't stop laughing," Lucas said, his own chuckle warm. Emma giggled, her eyes sparkling. "That's my daddy." Then, with a child's directness, she said, "Uncle Lucas, you're like him. You make Max happy, and me too." Lucas froze, his throat tightening, the wooden Malinois carving in his pocket suddenly heavy with meaning. He knelt beside her, wheelchair, his voice rough. "That's the best thing anyone's ever said to me, kid." Tom, witnessing the exchange, felt a shift. Later that evening, as they ate chili and finalized Max's welcome poster, he handed Lucas a beer, a silent gesture of trust. "You're good for her," Tom said, his voice low. "Michael saw something in you, and I'm starting to see it too." Lucas nodded, his eyes on Emma, who was showing Max the glittery stars. "I was lost for a long time," he admitted. "But this, helping Emma, Max, it's what I was meant to do." He pulled the wooden Malinois from his pocket, its details, capturing Max's alert posture, and gave it to Emma. "For you," he said, "until Max is back to full speed." Emma's face lit up, her fingers tracing the carving. "It's perfect, Uncle Lucas," she said, and the simple words sealed their bond. The new dynamic extended beyond the bungalow. Lucas accompanied Emma to therapy, his encouragement boosting her confidence as she worked on upper body strength. He collaborated with her physical therapist to integrate Max's exercises with Emma's, ensuring both recovered in tandem. Ave. School, Emma shared stories of Uncle Lucas and Max, her pride in their family evident. Lucas, inspired by Emma's resilience, began volunteering at a local canine training program, using his skills to prepare service dogs for other children, a way to honor Michael's legacy. Tom, once skeptical, now relied on Lucas's insights. Their late-night talks about Emma's future, forging a partnership rooted in shared care. As Max's strength returned, so did Emma's independence, but the true transformation was in their family. Lucas's carving sat on Emma's nightstand, a symbol of his commitment, while his presence, steady, flawed, but earnest, filled a void Michael had left. Emma's trust in Lucas, mirrored by Max's calm acceptance, had turned a chance encounter into a lifeline. The bond, forged through shared pain and purpose, was now unbreakable, setting the stage for a celebration of their journey. The spring sun shone brightly over Willow Creek Park, its grassy expanse transformed into a vibrant community. Picnic 6 months after the Harvest Fair fire. Colorful blankets dotted the lawn, laden with potluck dishes, macaroni salad, grilled corn, homemade pies, while children played tag and a local guitarist strummed a gentle melody. At the heart of the gathering stood a small wooden stage, decorated with streamers and a banner that read Heroes Day. The event, organized by the town to honor acts of bravery, centered on one special recipient, Max, the Belgian Malinois service dog, whose courage had saved lives during the fire. Emma Carter, her wheelchair adorned with a blue ribbon, sat near. The stage, her auburn curls gleaming under a straw hat. Max, fully recovered, lay beside her, his custom harness, designed by Lucas Kane, polished to a shine, his amber eyes alert but content. Uncle Tom stood proudly nearby, a camera around his neck, while Lucas, in a crisp button-down shirt, adjusted Max's harness, his movements steady but tinged with nervous anticipation. The picnic was more than a celebration. It was a testament to the family they'd become, forged through Max's heroism and their shared journey of healing. The park buzzed with familiar faces, neighbors who'd cheered Emma at school events, firefighters who'd battled the blaze, and veterans from Lucas's VA group, their presence a quiet nod to his growth. Emma clutched a folded piece of paper, her speech for Max's award, her small hands steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. She'd spent days writing it, with Lucas's help, wanting every word to honor her dog and her father's legacy. Max's recovery had restored her independence, his ability to retrieve, brace, and alert to medical emergencies, as sharp as ever, but it was the bond with Lucas and Tom that had truly transformed her world. Lucas, once a stranger, was now Uncle Lucas, a title that felt as natural as Max's presence. His wooden Malinois carving sat on her nightstand, a daily reminder of his promise to stay. As the mayor took the stage, the crowd hushed, her voice carrying over the warm breeze. "Today we honor courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable spirit of our community," she began, recounting the fire and Max's role in guiding Lucas and a trapped child to safety. Max, a service dog to young Emma Carter, embodies the best of Willow Creek. Applause rippled through the crowd and Emma's cheeks flushed with pride. Tom squeezed her shoulder, whispering, "You've got this, Em." Lucas knelt beside her, checking Max's harness one last time. "He's ready, kid, so are you," he said, his green eyes warm with encouragement. Emma wheeled onto the stage, Max trotting in perfect heel, his harness catching the sunlight. The crowd's cheers grew louder, and Max's tail wagged, sensing the moment's weight. Emma unfolded her speech, her voice clear despite a slight tremble. "Max isn't just my service dog," she began. "He's my best friend, my hero, and my connection to my daddy, Michael Carter, who trained him to keep me safe." She paused, glancing at Max, who sat attentively, his eyes locked on her. When the fire happened, Max didn't think about himself. He helped Uncle Lucas save a boy even though it hurt him. That's what heroes do, they help others no matter what. Her gaze found Lucas in the crowd and she smiled. "Max taught us all to be brave, and so did Uncle Lucas, who's part of our family now." The crowd erupted in applause, many wiping tears, moved by Emma's poise and the story of their unconventional family. The mayor presented Emma with a small gold medal for Max, which she clipped onto his harness, her fingers lingering on his fur. "Good boy," she whispered, and Max nudged her hand, drawing laughter from the audience. As Emma wheeled off the stage, Lucas stepped up, unscripted, his voice rough but steady. "I wasn't supposed to speak today," he began, "but I need to say something. 6 months ago I was a mess, running from my past. Emma and Max, they gave me a reason to stop running." He looked at Emma, his eyes glistening. "Your dad, Michael, saved my life once. You and Max saved it again. This is for him and for you." He raised a hand to the crowd, dedicating the moment to Michael's memory, and the applause swelled, a wave of communal gratitude. The picnic continued with a lighter tone, families mingling, children petting Max with Emma's permission, and Lucas sharing stories with firefighters about Max's training. Tom, usually reserved, laughed freely, snapping photos of Emma feeding Max a treat, her face alight with joy. A heartwarming moment came when Emma, Lucas and Tom joined a group of kids for a game of frisbee, Max watching eagerly from his rest spot. Lucas tossed the frisbee gently to Emma, who caught it with a triumphant grin, her independence shining through. "Nice one, kid," Lucas called, and Tom, watching, realized how fully Lucas had become family, a brother in spirit, filling a role Michael had hoped for. As the sun dipped lower, the trio sat together on a blanket, sharing slices of pie. Max sprawled contentedly beside Emma. The community's warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the isolation each had known. Emma leaned against Tom, her voice soft. "Daddy would like this, wouldn't he?" Tom nodded, his throat tight. "He'd love it, Em. Especially seeing you and Max up there." Lucas carving a new wooden figure, a tiny wheelchair. For Emma added, "Michael's probably laughing, saying we finally got it right." Emma giggled, her hand resting on Max's harness, the medal glinting in the fading light. The celebration marked not just Max's heroism, but the family they'd built through shared pain and purpose. Emma's speech, Lucas's words, and Max's steady presence had woven their story into Willow Creek's heart, a testament to resilience and love. As the picnic wound down, the trio prepared to head home, their bond stronger than ever, ready to face whatever came next with Max at their side. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, amber glow over Willow Creek Park, its rays filtering through the budding oaks as the community picnic wound down. Emma Carter's wheelchair rolled gently along the accessible path, her small hands guiding the wheels with confidence, a faint smile playing on her lips. Max, her Belgian Malinois service, dog trotted beside her, his custom harness gleaming, the gold medal from the Heroes' Day ceremony catching the light with every step. His recovery from the Harvest Fair fire was complete, his strength and instincts as sharp as ever, a living testament to the resilience that bound their family. Uncle Tom walked to her left, his camera slung around his neck, a contented ease. In his stride that hadn't been there months ago, Lucas Kane, now a fixture in their lives, walked to her right, his flannel shirt rolled up, a new wooden carving, a tiny replica of Emma's wheelchair in his pocket, ready to surprise her. Later, the picnic's laughter and music faded behind them as they approached a quiet corner of the park, where a simple granite bench stood beneath a flowering dogwood tree, Michael Carter's memorial. Emma slowed her wheelchair, her blue eyes settling. On the bench, its inscription worn but clear, "Michael Carter, beloved father, officer, hero." A small vase of wildflowers placed by Tom earlier rested at its base, their petals swaying in the breeze. Max sat alertly beside her, his ears twitching as if sensing the weight of the moment. Emma reached into her backpack, pulling out a single daisy she'd plucked from the picnic, her fingers careful but steady. "This is for Daddy," she said, softly, her voice carrying a maturity that belied her 8 years. Tom and Lucas exchanged a glance, their silence a shared acknowledgement of the journey that had brought them here, a journey of loss, healing, and the unexpected family they'd forged through Max's loyalty and Michael's legacy. Emma wheeled closer to the bench, Max adjusting his pace to match hers, and placed the daisy beside the wildflowers. "Hi, Daddy," she began, her tone conversational, as if Michael were sitting there, his warm laugh ready to answer. "We had a big day. Max got a medal for being a hero, just like you said he'd be." He saved a boy and Uncle Lucas in the fire, even though it was scary. She paused, stroking Max's fur, his warmth grounding her. Uncle Lucas helped Max get better, and he's part of our family now, like you wanted. He tells me stories about you, like how you made Max bark for treats in the desert. I wish I could hear you tell them, but it's okay. Max and Uncle Lucas and Uncle Tom, they keep us safe just like you did. Tom's eyes glistened, his hand resting on Emma's shoulder, a quiet pride in her strength. He'd spent 2 years navigating the challenges of raising a child with disabilities, often feeling inadequate compared to Michael's effortless parenting. But Emma's words, her trust in their makeshift family, eased a burden he'd carried silently. Lucas, standing slightly apart, gripped the carving in his pocket, his throat tight. Michael's memory had once been a source of pain, a reminder of his own failures, but Emma's acceptance and Max's recovery had given him a new lens. He was no longer the broken soldier who'd provoked a scene at the cafe. He was Uncle Lucas, a man rebuilding his life through love and purpose. Emma continued, her voice steady but filled with a child's earnestness. "I'm doing okay, Daddy. Max helps me at school and I'm getting stronger in therapy. Uncle Lucas says I'm tougher than he was in the army, but I think he's just being nice." She giggled, and Max's tail thumped as if sharing the joke. "I miss you and Mommy, but I know you're watching. I love you." She leaned forward, touching the bench's inscription, her fingers tracing the word, Father. The moment was simple, profound, a quiet communion with the man who'd shaped their lives. Tom knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Your dad would be so proud, Em. Of you, of Max, of all of us." Lucas stepped closer, finally speaking, his words rough but heartfelt. "Michael always said you were his light, Emma. He'd say we're doing right by you, keeping that light shining." He pulled the wooden wheelchair carving from his pocket, its details capturing the curve of her wheels, and placed it in her hand. "For you and your dad," he said. "So he knows we're together." Emma's eyes widened, her smile radiant. As she clutched the carving, its weight a symbol of their bond. The trio lingered by the bench, the park's sounds fading into a gentle hum. Max lay down, his head resting near Emma's feet, his medal glinting in the sunset. The scene was a tableau of healing. Emma resilient despite her losses, Tom a caregiver who'd found balance, Lucas a man redeemed by purpose, and Max, the loyal dog who'd tied them together. Their story, born from a tense encounter at the cafe, had unfolded through shared pain, courage, and second chances, proving that family isn't just born, it's built. As they turned to leave, Emma wheeled ahead, Max trotting proudly beside her, his harness a badge of his heroism. Tom and Lucas followed, their steps synchronized, a quiet understanding between them. The sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and pink, wrapping the park in a glow that felt like hope. Emma glanced back, her voice bright. "Can we come back tomorrow, Uncle Lucas? Max likes it here." Lucas grinned, his heart full. "Anytime, kid. Anytime." The final image, of Emma, Max, Tom, and Lucas moving together, the bench a silent anchor behind them, carried a timeless truth. Love and loyalty can mend even the deepest wounds, creating a family stronger than the sum of its parts. Their journey, sparked by a dog's unwavering devotion, left a legacy of hope, a reminder that healing is possible when hearts are open to second chances.